It's the end of one year and almost the start of the next. It's that magical time when you're wrapping up what was hopefully a great year and then looking forward to what might be for the next. If it wasn't a great year, well, then the magic comes from knowing that the year's almost over and the next year will hopefully be better. Whatever side of the fence that you're on, one of the things I believe you should be doing is at least thinking about some of the things you'd like to achieve for yourself and the world in the coming days. Now, here's the thing. If the idea of goal setting seems foreign to you, or worse, turns your stomach, which is what it did for me for many years, you're probably not to blame. The way goal setting is talked about and is taught typically, almost completely wrong. It's disconnected and detached from the reality that most people live. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the show. My name is Blaine. I'm the founder of the Coaching Academy and your host for this and every episode of the always sponsor-free Real Value Podcast and the Coach Blaine YouTube channel. In this episode, I'm going to teach you the three most important things you need, and likely the only things you need to start living the life you imagine in your head, but can't seem to step into in reality. So let's dive in. If you just do a standard Google search for, say, goal setting, you're likely to come across something called the SMART framework for goal setting, whereby each letter of the word SMART, S-M-A-R-T, stands for a goal setting parameter, if you will. The S is for specific, the M is for measurable, the A for attainable or achievable, the R for relevant, and the T for time-bound. As in, your goals must be specific, measurable, achievable, or attainable, relevant, and they must have some kind of deadline, if you will, or time-bound. Nothing really wrong with any of that, except for the glaring fact that none of those letters or steps in the process address the most important aspect of all goal setting: you. James Clear, the author of the book Atomic Habits, well, he goes much deeper on the topic by talking about how both winners and non-winners, I don't like to call them losers, but winners and non-winners in life and sports, they both have goals. Yet very few people actually ever reach their goals, and fewer yet ever get to stand in the proverbial winner's circle or on the podium, which points to the fact that there's something missing when it comes to goals and the goal-setting process. Since both winners and losers in those examples, they likely had the same goals, which was to win. Now, of course, when it comes to sports, there can only be one winner, so that's a kind of a unique example, but it points to the failings of the goal-setting process in general when it's done the wrong way, and it places the focus on the wrong thing. So I'm going to let you in on a little secret that I learned years ago, and it's made all the difference in my life and the businesses when it comes to setting goals. The only three things you need to focus on when it comes to achieving anything, in my opinion, are story, your state, and then your strategy, and in that order. Forget all of the complicated goal-setting processes and rules that you've been taught over the years, because the only things that really matter are your story, the state the story puts you in, and then only at the very end stage, of course, the strategy. Now, what do I mean by story, state, and strategy? Is that exactly as it sounds? What is your story? What state of mind are you in, and what state of mind do your goals put you in? And only then do we get to ask, what will our strategy be for achievement or attaining those things? Now, if we go back to the SMART goals framework for just a minute, the reason so many people give up on their goals is because they've been taught this SMART goal framework. Make sure your goals are specific and measurable and attainable and relevant and time-bound. All good, right? Wrong. Going about goal setting this way is the equivalent to telling a teenager who's maybe never driven a car before to just jump in the car, look at the map, and drive to a location. Now, they might arrive at the location just fine, but the odds are not in their favor. And the likelihood of them breaking some laws, putting lots of people in danger, and of course endangering themselves and the vehicle is very high. Making your goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound are all good guidelines to follow. But friends, it's the end of the process, and it teaches us nothing about the more important parts of the whole process and the parts that are almost always working against us, by the way. So what's the right way, Blaine, to achieve anything? Start with the story. In my opinion and experience working on this stuff for 30 years, the first two parts, story and state, are the most important parts of the process, and I'm going to explain why. When I say story, I'm talking about the story you tell yourself every day about who you are, or at least who you think you are, Whether it's a conscious voice you hear in your head each day or the subconscious voice whispering at you constantly, we all have a story. The story of who we are today is one of the most powerful determining factors when it comes to accomplishing anything. And if part of your story is, for example, that you're not an athlete, a goal of running the Boston Marathon might be tough and potentially lead to massive failure, just reinforcing the story that you're not an athlete. Now, that's not to say that setting a goal of running the Boston Marathon is a bad thing. And in fact, it might just be the thing that helps you write a new story that says you're not an athlete. Nevertheless, if you're not aware of the story you have running in your brain and what is achievable and what isn't achievable in that regard, all the goals in the world will never get you to the Boston Marathon. It's not the goal that matters in this example. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, who you will have to become to achieve a goal like that, and then the strategy ultimately used to write a new story. Friends, story is so vital because it is the operating system, the OS, if you will, that runs in our heads on a moment-to-moment basis. Our story began at birth, and it's been being written every day of our lives since. Every chapter is based on the things that we heard, the things that we saw, the things we experienced, the things we like, the things we don't like, the things that make us feel better, the things that make us feel worse, regardless of whether or not any of those things are good for us. If you're ever wondering what your story is in any area of your life, just look around you and see what's there and present today. If you're wondering what your story, for example, around money is, just look in your bank account or your investment accounts. Don't have any investments? Well, that's part of your money story. There's a reason your bank account is either bursting at the seams or begging to be fed. And it all has to do with the story you tell yourself moment to moment about what money is and what it means to you. It has to do with the story. Wondering what your story is around, say, health, wellness, and fitness? Look in the mirror. Jump up and down and see what shakes. Whether you're a marathon runner who watches every calorie or somebody who shudders at the mention of going to the gym, who you are today comes down to the story that you've told yourself, you've been telling yourself, and that you tell yourself moment to moment. If you want something different in any area of your life, you will always start with addressing the story you have about that particular thing. Want more money in your life? Address the story you have around money and why you don't have enough of it. Want to be in better shape? Address the story you tell yourself around health, diet, and fitness, and then decide what the new story needs to be in order to go to the next step, which has to do with the mental and emotional state that you put yourself in. Story, state, and strategy. The stories we tell ourselves determine the state we are in moment to moment. And it's only after you address some of the stories you've been telling yourself about who you are today in this moment and what you are capable of that you can then start to manage your mental and emotional state and lay out a strategy. Now, one last thing on story before we move on to state and strategy. Whatever your goal or goals may be, I'm going to strongly recommend that you develop a story to wrap around your goal in as well. Since story is so powerful in guiding and directing our actions moment to moment, the powerful secret that shouldn't be a secret at all is that when you change the story, you change the meaning that things have for you. If you want the quickest and shortest path to becoming somebody different or new, you simply change the story that you've been telling yourself about a particular thing, anything. When it comes to setting goals around what you'd like to achieve in any area, writing what may seem like a work of fiction at the moment can be one of the most powerful things you can do to begin the process of becoming who you need to become to achieve the kind of goal you want to achieve. That's not to give credence to the old adage of, say, fake it till you make it. But since you've been telling yourself a story this whole time anyways, why not just start telling a new, more empowering and exciting story about the new you, the new habits that the new you has adopted, and the why behind all of it. It's all about the story you tell yourself. If the story isn't compelling enough to keep you inspired and motivated over an extended period of time, well, then the old you always wins. It comes down to story. Before you start to set new goals, friend, write new stories about those goals that matter. Now, on to the state part. The state part after story is simply the state of mind, the state of emotion, the state of attitude, and the state of focus that you are in at any given moment. A goal is supposed to be exciting enough that when you think about it, you automatically put yourself in a positive, empowering state emotionally and mentally. If when you think about a particular goal, instead of getting inspired and motivated, you get depressed, you get tired, you get annoyed, aggravated, and turned off, well, then the goal isn't the right one for you. There is a mismatch between your story and the strategy that is creating a negative feeling that will ultimately keep you where you were before setting the goal. Whatever goal or goals you can imagine for yourself, your internal and external state become the bridge between your story around the why that the goal and the strategy you choose to head in that direction. Most people set goals because of some kind of external result or reward that they're anticipating upon reaching the goal. It's out there in the future. The problem with this method is that it reinforces the idea in our subconscious mind that we are not yet that thing or don't yet have that thing. And we will only be that kind of person once we are that person, once we arrive at that goal, or once we have that thing. If the whole time you are working toward a goal, you're subconsciously thinking, I won't be the kind of person I want to be until I reach the goal, eventually you burn out because you'll constantly be putting yourself in a state of negative emotion, a negative state of mind, while you wait to arrive at the goal state. Instead, we start with a new story about the kind of person who would think, act, and be the kind of person who has already achieved the thing we want to be. You don't have to wait to arrive at a particular goal. Instead, you have to write a new story that creates a new internal and external state of someone who already acts in a way that is consistent with that goal. Let's just use an example of weight loss, because that's an easy one. You start off the new year with a new goal of losing 30 or 40 pounds. Instead of jumping right into a strategy of how you might lose the weight with a diet and exercise program, counting calories and counting energy in versus energy out, that's the strategy. No. Instead, we start with the story we've been telling ourselves that has led to the current state that you're in, 30 to 40 pounds overweight. The old story needs to be addressed, rewritten with new information, new facts, a new compelling story that will put you in a state that is inspired and motivated to ask the most important questions in this whole process, which is this: who do I need to become to be the kind of person that is 30 pounds lighter? What does somebody who has already reached that state do when it comes to eating and exercise and mindset and sleep and meditation and water intake, etc.? These kinds of questions get put into a form that sound kind of like this. If I was the kind of person already who had lost 30 to 40 pounds, what would my diet look like? What would my daily schedule look like? What would my exercise and fitness routine look like? What would my mindset be? What would my habits be around this subject? What would my life be like, and how would I feel about it? You see, one of the big reasons why only 8% of people are still pursuing their New Year's resolutions at the end of January or February, an abysmal statistic, by the way, is because they start the process backwards. They begin with the strategy without ever addressing the story that got them to where they are today and their state of mind that has led them to where they were on December 31st. Friend, the story that you've been telling yourself is responsible for your state of mind on any given day and on any given topic. Health, fitness, money, relationships, family, and every area of your life you have a story for. And if you don't address the old story and the meaning that you give to the certain things in that story, no amount of effort in a particular area will result in long-term change. You might have small short-term wins and gains, but the old story, which led to the old behaviors, the old habits, and the state of mind that you carried for so many years, will almost always win in the long run. Think of your story and your state like an internal thermostat. It considers it a win if it keeps you at a desired temperature. If you grew up seeing and hearing all kinds of stories about, say, money struggles and how evil rich people are, your story is likely one that keeps your internal thermostat around money and finances below the level of rich and evil. If your internal thermostat is one that grew up with the notion that food is either a reward or a punishment, or that there isn't enough of it to go around, or some other disempowering story around food, Well, your internal thermostat around that topic will always keep you in a state that matches your story. It just happens that you may wake up one day unhappy with some external effect that came from that story around your food, your eating, your fitness, your money. Unless until you address the part of the story and the internal thermostat that got you to where you are today and keeps you there, the thermostat will always bring you back to your desired comfort zone. Friends, goals should be designed around who you want to be and need to become to achieve the thing you want to achieve. Thinking about the thing you want to achieve should put you in a mental and emotional state that empowers you to move beyond your old internal thermostat setting so that you can be comfortable at a new setting, a setting that is more congruent with the person you want to become and one that has a new empowering story about who that person is. Now, as a side note, if you've ever heard or followed the stories of lottery winners, people who've won millions and millions of dollars, something like 88% of all those people end up worth less than before they won the lottery 10 years later. Why? Because they had an internal story and an internal thermostat that was not prepared for that level of wealth. Friends, do not start off 2025 with a new strategy unless that new strategy is accompanied by a new story that overwrites the old story. A new story that puts you in an empowered state mentally and emotionally and feeds a new attitude that is willing to overcome the inevitable challenges that always come with becoming someone new, which is essentially what you're doing when you set a goal. You're becoming somebody new. Only then will you be able to develop a powerful strategy that coincides with the new story and the new state of mind. Story, state, and only then strategy. Until the next time, my friends, I'm out.